A random woman walks up to a child in the middle of a tourney ground and tells him he's going to be king.
You shall be king.
That he'll die in a hot fire, that worms will feed on his ashes, and that everyone who ever knew him will celebrate the day he's gone.
And die in hot fire, and worms shall feed upon your ass, and all who know you shall rejoice.
And the worst part? She's right. About all of it. But we'll get there. Because before this episode rips your heart out, it spends 20 minutes being one of the most purely enjoyable stretches of television the Game of Thrones universe has ever given us. And that contrast between the warmth of what we're watching and the weight of what we know is coming, that's what makes the Squire something special. The episode opens before dawn. Dunk is still asleep under an elm tree, and Egg is already up, quietly watching him. There's something almost protective in the way this kid looks at this giant man, like he's already decided that this is his night, even if no one else believes it yet. And then he gets to work. He takes Thunder, Dunk's absolute nightmare of a warhorse, and starts training, running back and forth across the field, pretending to hand off a lance, shouting "charge" at an animal that could not care less about his enthusiasm. It's adorable, it's funny, and Dexter Soul Ansel is doing something really subtle here, because underneath all that playfulness, you can see the desperation. This kid needs to be useful. He needs to earn his place next to a knight who doesn't even think he'll survive the week. This is also where we meet Sir Robin Wrestling, the maddest knight in the Seven Kingdoms. One Eye, Steel Eyepatch, shows up out of nowhere and immediately thinks Egg has stolen Dunk's horse. But Egg talks his way out of it, and when Wrestling asks who he serves, Egg says, with genuine pride, "Sir Duncan the Tall. He's large enough for the both of us."
I serve Sir Duncan the Tall. He's large enough for the both of us.
Now, here's what's smart about this scene. In the novella, Sir Robin barely gets a mention. He shows up later, and you're supposed to just know who he is. The show gives him a proper introduction here, makes him memorable, and this matters, makes sure you remember him for when the story needs him later. That's good adaptation work. When Egg gets back to camp, Dunk is grumpy. His squire disappeared with his horse before sunrise, and that horse is the most valuable thing Dunk owns, possibly the only thing standing between him and not being a knight anymore. But watch what happens next. Dunk tells Egg he'd eat his fist if he doesn't do as he's told.
You'll eat my fist if you don't do as you're told.
Egg flinches, and Dunk immediately softens, just completely deflates. He can't do it. He can't even pretend to be threatening to this kid. Instead, he sits him down and teaches him how to sew a patch. And when Egg gets it right, when this tiny, bald child successfully stitches leather, Dunk lights up like it's the greatest achievement in the Seven Kingdoms. This enormous man genuinely thrilled that his squire can thread a needle. Later, Egg starts singing while whittling away at a piece of wood, a tavern song about battles and blood, the kind of thing a kid probably shouldn't know. But listen to the words.
Daemon was the bastard, so they kicked his bastard. Grass is green in summer, green grass.
He's singing the story of the first Blackfire Rebellion, Daemon Blackfire, bastard son of Aegon the Unworthy, rising against his half-brother King Daeron, the Battle of the Redgrass Field, Princes Baelor and Maekar crushing the rebel host with a hammer and anvil maneuver, the defining civil war of recent Westerosi history delivered as a dirty drinking song by a kid who shouldn't know any of this. Here's a nerdy detail that I think is genuinely fascinating. The word Blackfire doesn't appear once in the original novella. George R.R. Martin hadn't even conceived of the Blackfire Rebellion when he wrote The Hedge Knight in 1998. He developed it later for the subsequent novellas, so the show is pulling from future source material and weaving it back into the first story. And it works because it deepens why the Targaryens are so on edge, why they've come to a minor tourney at Ashford in force, and why a kid like Egg might want to run away from all of it. And Dunk, this man who's built like a castle wall, has been stress vomiting all morning, absolutely wrecked by anxiety about entering the lists. And then Egg casually informs him that he's not even fighting today. First day is reserved for highborn knights. Then why have I been vomiting all morning, he asks. It's a mystery, says Egg.
And why have I been vomiting all morning?
It's a mystery.
The delivery is perfect. Which brings us to the goose. Dunk heads to the market for eggs. Just eggs. But the farmer doesn't speak the common tongue, or maybe Dunk just can't communicate to save his life, because what follows is this 6'5" man flapping his arms, squatting, miming a goose laying an egg, desperately conveying, "Please do not kill this bird, I just want what comes out of it." The music goes full Robin Hood. Tanzel walks by and catches him mid-flap. Egg gives him grief about it for the rest of the morning. It's slapstick, it's warm, and under it, quietly, there's something real. This is a man who physically cannot stomach watching an animal die for his breakfast. Remember that, it matters later. The jousts begin that afternoon, and they watch from the crowd. Dunk tells Egg he can't even drink a pint of ale. Yeah, because it's disgusting, fires back Egg. And sitting on a hillside outside the tourney grounds, Egg starts dreaming out loud about the future. He imagines them traveling together, Dunk winning tourneys, both of them eventually settling down. And then, very carefully, almost holding his breath, he asks if he can stay on as Dunk's squire after the tournament is done. You can see it on Dunk's face. He wants to say yes. He's already attached to this kid. That's when Plummer shows up. Plummer, Lord Ashford's steward, the man who can't get through a conversation without spitting, pulls Dunk aside with a proposition. Don't risk everything in the jousts. Instead, challenge Lord Ashford's son, who'll agree to throw the fight. Dunk wins, gets the horse, arms, armor. Plummer and Lord Ashford bet on the upset and make a fortune. Everyone walks away happy. This is entirely a show invention. In the novella, Lord Ashford's sons fight well and lose honorably to greater opponents. The show adds this because it needs a moral test for Dunk that the audience can see. And his answer is immediate, instinctive. He doesn't want a victory he hasn't earned.
I do not want a victory that I have not earned.
No deliberation, no wrestling with it. The idea simply offends something fundamental in him. And the show is quietly stacking these moments, the goose, the whipstitch, the refusal to cheat, building a case for who this man is, so that when the big moment comes, you understand exactly why he does what he does. The jousting resumes, and Aerion Targaryen enters the lists. We met Aerion briefly in episode 2. 3 sentences, all of them dripping with contempt, but this is the first time we see him in full. Black dragon helm adorned with metal flames. The crowd goes quiet. His opponent is Sir Humphrey Harding, and on the second pass, Aerion drives his lance directly into Humphrey's horse's neck. Not a glancing blow, not an accident, a deliberate, targeted kill shot on the animal. The horse collapses, Humphrey's leg is crushed beneath it, the executioner has to come out and put the horse down, and Aerion rides off like it's Tuesday. The crowd erupts, stones fly, someone clocks Aerion's helmet. The guards have to hold people back from rushing the field. And here's what should be sticking in your mind right now. Not long ago in this same episode, a man who could probably kill most people at Ashford with his bare hands was flapping around like an idiot trying to save a goose. And now a prince just murdered a horse for sport and didn't even look back. Same episode, same 30 minutes. The show doesn't comment on it. It trusts you to feel the distance between those two men. But watch Egg during this scene. He doesn't react the way Dunk does. Dunk is stunned, almost disbelieving. He can't accept that a knight could be so dishonorable. Egg goes cold, completely still. He tells Dunk flatly that Aerion did it on purpose. No hesitation, no doubt.
That was no mishap.
Because Egg knows his brother. He's watched this his whole life. And you can see something shift in his face when Dunk still can't quite believe it. The quiet recognition that Dunk's innocence about how the world works is both his greatest quality and the thing that's going to get him killed. After the joust, Dunk and Egg take refuge at a gathering where Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, shirtless, wearing his antlers, and Sir Manfred Dondarrion are singing a crude song called Alice with Three Fingers. It's about a woman in a brothel with a very particular talent. Everyone's laughing. It's bawdy and dumb and fun. And then Egg does something unexpected. He reinterprets the whole thing. Where everyone hears a dirty joke, Egg hears a story about dignity, about someone giving more than what was asked, even from the lowest possible position in life. Is this not the act of a dogged spirit, he says? And Dunk just stares at him, because what child talks like that? Think about when this moment lands in the episode. Egg has just watched his brother kill a horse for sport. He's just seen the worst of what Targaryen power does. And he takes a filthy pub song and finds meaning in it, finds worth in a woman nobody else would look twice at. That tells you everything about who this kid is and what he's running from. Walking through the camp afterward, the conversation turns quieter. Egg asks Dunk if he ever knew his father. "No, not really," Egg says about his own. "Most like I saw mine hanged," Dunk replies, almost like he's talking about the weather. A cook in Fleabottom told him his father was a thief. Two people from completely different worlds sharing the kind of honesty you only share with someone you trust. And neither of them knows the full truth about the other yet. A prince pretending to be an orphan, a man from the gutter who might not even be a real knight. And then a fortune teller stops them. She tells Dunk he'll be a great knight, richer than the Lannisters. Fine, flattering, maybe true. Then she looks at Egg. "You shall be king, and you shall die in a hot fire, and worms shall feed upon your ashes, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying." The episode doesn't linger on it. Dunk brushes it off. Egg asks why she would say that, quietly, like the words have already gotten under his skin. They walk on, but the words hang there in the air, and if you know what they mean, and we'll get to that, they change the color of everything that comes after. This scene doesn't exist in the novella. The show invented it. Dunk and Egg part ways. Dunk goes to drink cider with Raymond Fossaway, and Egg heads off to watch Tansel's puppet show. Raymond is where Dunk gets an earful. He calls the Targaryens incestuous aliens, blood magickers, tyrants who conquered with fire and forced every great house to kneel.
We're incestuous aliens, Duncan. Blood magickers and tyrants who've burned our lands.
Every pale-haired brat they've saddled on us has been madder than the last. This kind of open, populist fury toward the Targaryens would have been unthinkable during the era of House of the Dragon. You did not talk about the Dragon Lords like this when there were actual dragons parked outside the castle. But the dragons are gone now. The fear is gone. The respect is going with it, and Aegon, with his horse-killing and his arrogance, is accelerating that erosion every time he puts on a helmet. The show is doing some really elegant long-game world-building here. We know where this road ends, with Robert's rebellion, with the Targaryens driven from the throne, with Daenerys growing up in exile. And what we're seeing at Ashford is one of the early cracks. The dynasty isn't falling yet, but you can hear the foundation creaking. And tucked into Raymond's rant, almost as a throwaway, he mentions one of Maekar's sons, a useless boy they were going to ship off to the Citadel to make a Maester of him, never going to amount to anything. Hold that, we're coming back to it. Meanwhile, in the puppet tent, Tansel is performing the story of Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, a legendary knight who slayed a dragon through cleverness rather than brute force. The crowd loves it. The puppet dragon is magnificent, all red streamers of blood when Tansel's knight stabs it. But Aegon has walked in, and he's watching a crowd cheer as a dragon dies. Think about what that looks like to him. His family's greatest symbol, being killed by a commoner, and the small folk are celebrating. For a Targaryen who's already insecure about his family's diminished power, no dragons, no fear, rocks thrown at his head, this is personal. The dragon ought never lose. That's what he says right before he breaks Tancel's finger. 5 words that tell you everything about the Targaryen psychology at this point in history. They're not powerful enough to be untouchable anymore, but they haven't accepted it yet. And that gap between who they think they are and who they actually are is where all the cruelty lives. Dunk sees red, doesn't think about consequences, doesn't consider that he's about to hit a prince of the blood. He sees a woman being hurt and he swings. And the moment his fist connects with Aegon's jaw, everything changes. You can punch a lot of people in Westeros and walk away. A Targaryen prince is not one of them. Aegon's guards pin Dunk down. Aegon, tasting blood, announces they're going to start by removing all of Dunk's teeth. And it genuinely looks like this is where Sir Duncan the Tall's story ends, beaten to death in a puppet tent because he did the right thing. And then a small voice cuts through everything. Don't touch him. Every guard stops.
Don't touch him!
Egg walks in and calls off the guards by name. Aegon turns. You impudent little wretch, what's happened to your hair? I didn't want to look like you. Brother, he calls him. Cut to black on Dunk's face. And you can see the math happening. The bald head, the vocabulary, the way he reinterpreted a pub song like a scholar, the way he knew Aegon killed that horse on purpose, the fortune teller saying he'd be king, Egg short for Aegon. His squire is a prince of the Iron Throne. So here's who this kid actually is. Aegon Targaryen, youngest son of Prince Maekar, grandson of King Daeron the Good, 12th in line for the Iron Throne, so far down the succession that nobody in the world would expect him to wear the crown. He shaved his head to hide his silver-gold Targaryen hair. He ran away from his family, and he chose to sleep in the dirt next to a hedge knight who can't afford his own armor because he believed, genuinely, deeply, that there was more honor in that life than in his own.
I think I could be quite happy in a place like this.
Now everything recontextualizes. Is this not the act of a dogged spirit? A prince who'd already seen his own family at its ugliest, deciding that dignity exists in the people they step on. Egg's whole philosophy, that worth isn't determined by birthright, that anyone can enrich the world by giving more than's asked, that's not abstract to him. He's lived on both sides of that line. And when you think about why he ran, look at what his family is. Look at Aerion. Look at the horse. Look at Tancel's broken finger. Egg saw all of that growing up, and he decided he'd rather be a squire to a man who can't kill a goose. Now, the fortune teller. Let's go through what she actually said, line by line. You shall be king. He does. Aegon the Fifth. They call him Aegon the Unlikely, because when you're the youngest son of a fourth son, nobody expects you to wear the crown. But a series of deaths, abdications, and tragedies clears the path, and the boy who never wanted to be a prince ends up on the Iron Throne. And here's the thing. He becomes arguably the most beloved king the Targaryens ever produce, because unlike every other royal who sat that chair, Egg actually understood the lives of common people. He'd traveled the roads with Dunk, eaten hard salt beef, slept under trees. He knew what the realm looked like from the bottom, and he spent his reign trying to make it better for the people who lived there. And you shall die in a hot fire. The tragedy at Summerhall. Decades from now, Egg, now old, now king, attempts to hatch dragon eggs using wildfire. He wants to bring dragons back, not for conquest, not for power, but because he genuinely believes the realm needs them. Something goes catastrophically wrong. Summerhall, the Targaryen summer palace, the most beautiful place they ever built, burns to the ground. Egg dies in the flames, and Sir Duncan the Tall, the hedge knight who took him on as a squire all those years ago at Ashford Meadow, dies beside him. Their story begins together, and it ends together. And there's a detail that might break you. Egg named his firstborn son Duncan the Small, they called him. He died at Summerhall too, all three of them together in the fire. And worms shall feed upon your ashes. Summerhall was never rebuilt. Whatever happened there was so devastating that the Targaryens left the ruins standing. The ashes remained. And all who know you shall rejoice in your dying. As king, Egg spent decades trying to improve the lives of the small folk, the farmers, the servants, the people like Dunk. He passed reforms that stripped power from the lords and the nobility, and they hated him for it. When he died, many of them were quietly relieved. The man who challenged their grip on the realm was finally gone. But there's another layer, and this one will give you chills. On the exact day that Egg died at Summerhall, in the flames, in the ashes, a baby was born. Rhaegar Targaryen, the prince who one day would fall in love with Lyanna Stark and set in motion the chain of events that leads directly to Game of Thrones. The realm didn't just mourn a death that day. It celebrated a birth. One life ended and another began. Fire and rebirth, like a dragon egg cracking open. The fortune teller told a child everything, and the child went back to eating his goose eggs. And that useless boy Raymond mentioned, the one they were going to ship off to the Citadel, that's Aemon, Egg's older brother. The same Aemon Targaryen who, 90 years from now, will be a blind, ancient man serving as Maester of the Night's Watch. The same Aemon who tells Jon Snow that love is the death of duty, who tells Sam Tarly that a Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing. And when Aemon dies, over 100 years old, the last Targaryen anyone on the Wall has ever known, his final words are, "Egg, I dreamed that I was old."
Egg, I dreamed that I was old.
That clip has gone viral since the show premiered, and it should, because what we're watching right now, this charming little show about a big knight and a small boy eating goose eggs at a tourney, these are the days Aemon is dreaming about. These are the good ones, before the crown, before the fire, before everything that comes after. And the show never once stops to tell you to feel something. It gives you the information and trusts you to carry the weight yourself. 3 episodes in, and this show has given us a knight who might not actually be a knight, and a squire who's secretly a prince, both of them hiding who they really are. Both of them, despite those lies, more honest about what they value than anyone else at Ashford Meadow. Dunk values honor so deeply he can't cheat even when cheating would save him. Egg values dignity so deeply he left his own family to find it. They found each other because they're the same kind of person wearing different disguises. Dunk rises to Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, 4 pages in the White Book. Centuries later, Joffrey Baratheon flips past them without a second thought. He must have been quite a man, he says. He has no idea. Their story starts with a goose and ends with a dragon egg. And somewhere in between, a boy who didn't want to look like his brother becomes the best thing that family ever put on the throne. Next week, a hedge knight has to find 6 people willing to fight him against a prince. In a world like Westeros, that shouldn't be possible. But again, in a world like Westeros, a prince shouldn't want to be a squire either.